to the Week 3 edition of No Free Squares. I am your host and your only host for this Week 3 DFS show. Look, a couple things I want to do for housekeeping. Number one, things have changed in the podcasting universe with Twitter, with Periscope. And so at least for now, if you're watching via Twitter, I cannot see your comments. And if I can't see your comments, I can't answer your comments. If you do want to come on the YouTube, like my main man Willie here, he says, what's good? Look, a lot's good. I'm happy to be with you. Happy to be with you, folks. So if you want to get your comments in, make sure to head to the YouTube link. If you're seeing on Twitter, right beneath the stream is the YouTube link. Make sure to join through there. If you can't get on the YouTube link and you want to get your questions answered, just shoot me a DM. My DMs are open. I will check periodically, and I will make sure to get that. What's up, Maddie B? I can see you. So, quick. Anything you put through YouTube, I got you. Anything through Twitter, we will make it work. Make sure to DM me if you want to get your questions answered. Other thing I want to hit right off the top, obviously it's a really sad day in the fantasy football space. One of the leading analysts, people, family men that we all know in the industry, of course, is Mike Tagliere from Fantasy Pros. Just, I never got the chance to meet him in person, but long time before I was ever hosting a podcast, long time before I was ever writing, I was one of many, many people that read Tag's primer, listened to him on podcasts, and one of the warmest, kindest, most knowledgeable people in this industry. And on behalf of people in the Full Tilt Dynasty Network, we're incredibly, incredibly saddened, and we want to wish nothing but the best wishes that we possibly can to his family. We've already shared the GoFundMe link from my personal page from our main page. If anybody has any questions about how to use that link to lend a hand in any way that they can to the family, definitely feel free to reach out to me. It's a really, really sad situation, of course. But for the rest of this show, at least, we want to try and have a little bit of fun. We want to try and talk a little bit about football. I know it's hard on a day like today, but I hope that I can help take people's mind off it a little bit if that's what you need. And we're going to talk about DFS. We're going to talk about week 2. It was not a very good week for me at all. We're going to talk about what went wrong. We're going to talk about what was the bad process versus what we think was just bad luck, and how to make better decisions, better results in week 3. And then we're going to talk about the slate. I think it's really interesting. I think the Alvin Cook situation is really interesting, especially from what I'm hearing. It sounds like they're going to work them out pregame and decide then. So that makes me think that's going to be really worth talking about, how to handle that, how to handle a late swap opportunity with Cook. And then we're going to talk about, those top games. Everybody wants to talk about the Rams and the Bucks. They want to talk about the Chiefs and the Chargers. And we're going to talk about a couple other games too that I think are really interesting. So we're going to get into all of that. Of course, we're going to hit the sneaky athlete of the week, and we're going to play a little GPP roulette. So we're going to have a fun show today. I will be back in just about 10 seconds. Last time I said 20 and the commenters told me it was a lie. So I'm going to say 10 seconds this time. All right. All right. Welcome back here. And Daniel Meyer in the chat. Sup, Jacob? Sup to you, man. Sup to you. It's nice to see you in here. Make sure to hit me up with whatever questions you got as you're getting ready for the DFS slate. We're going to start off quick. We're going to review week 2. I'd like to say what went right, what went wrong. For me, at least, not a lot went right. Quite a lot went wrong. The cash lineup was a wash, but we don't really talk about cash on this show. For anyone new to this show, we talk about tournaments. Specifically, I play mostly small field tournaments, but I'm open to talking about any sort of tournament question that you have. And my tournament lineups, really, really struggled last week. They're pretty much dead on arrival from the early session because I didn't play Cup. And I talked about this. If anyone checks out my DFS article up on Player Profiler each week, I said Cup is one of the best projected plays in the slate. The problem for me with Cup was I wasn't super into Stafford. I thought there were were better quarterback plays. I was more into Kyler. I was more into Brady. I was more into Dak, into Herbert, Russ, Tannehill even. And I just didn't see the point of playing Kupp because I didn't really want to play anyone else in that game. At that point, I thought Pittman was going to miss the game. I probably should have played some Kupp and Pittman together in the early morning when I saw that Pittman was actually going to be active. That would have been an interesting one where I could have gotten Pittman at quite low ownership. And I think that would have been an interesting secondary correlation that I probably should have done. I chose to go in a different direction, which was just to say, you know what? Everybody's going to be playing this one-off wide receiver at 20% rostered. How bad is that going to hurt me? It turns out it's really, really going to hurt me. And the saying in mental health advocacy is you can't pour from an empty cup. And I was trying to pour a tournament victory out of a very empty cup. I think the only cup lineup I had was the Gpp Roulette lineup that I built with all of you. And that one sucked because we tossed in, I think, Jefferson or Tyler Higbee, one of those bums, didn't do anything. So that one got sewered. Tom wants winning lineups only. Tom, we're going to try, man. Last week it was losing lineups only. So we only got room to go up. Here is the issue. So the other big piece was Derrick Henry. And I was actually pretty into Henry last week. Anytime I can get the big dog down at like 5% owned, right? I mean, you can't own the big dog. The big dog has got to roam free. And I thought we had the big dog roaming free last week. I think he came in at like 5% in my contests around there. I was excited to do it. I had Henry DK. I had Henry Lockett on Saturday night. Problem was, what I wanted to do was I wanted to give myself information, right? So last week, everybody was all over this Chargers-Cowboys game. We talked about it if you were part of the show stream last week. I wanted to get myself information in the early slate, either via a stack or via just a couple pieces correlated together. And then I was sort of going to make my decision based on how I was doing after that early slate on if I was going to attack that game or I was going to go elsewhere. And just kind of the way the cookie crumbled was that any of the lineups that I had Henry in, I had to late swap out of because I had issues going on my early slate. And I wasn't really trying to late swap away from Henry because he wasn't going to be highly rostered anyways. It just so happened that the rosters that had Henry and other pieces I needed to get rid of needed to move some things around, and all the Henry got lost in the process. If I was playing MME, if I was playing 150 lineups, we probably would have had some Henry. But in this particular case, we didn't. We paid for it severely. The big dog ran rampant down my throat, and I got absolutely destroyed by the big dog. Even took away what I thought were some good late swaps. Like I had some lineups that were looking pretty dead. I played some Javonte. I even played a little bit of Kamara. That was the yikes. And I swapped most of my all of my Dallas Chargers away. I put most of it into Brady lineups, which did great. I put some into Kyler lineups. Those did great. I mean, we made a valiant charge at like cashing. We were never going to win. We were never going to win with 7 points from Alvin Kamara. But we made a charge of cashing. Didn't quite happen. We're going to do better. I think that the most interesting thing from last week, I learned, and I talked about this in my article this week for Player Profiler, was I always talk about profiting from uncertainty. And I think I got a little bit away from that in my process last week. I think I prioritized optionality over uncertainty. I think that I ended up starting from a place of, okay, this Chargers-Cowboys game is the best, and so I need to give myself ways to play it uniquely. I need to give myself options to get away from it if I need to. But ultimately, my strategy was rooted in, hey, if everything goes well, I want to play that game. And I should have just said, you know what, screw it. Anything can happen. Everything is uncertain. If everyone's going to play that game, I'm just not. I'm going to play the Bucs. I'm going to play the Cards. I'm going to play the Seahawks and the Titans. And then we're just going to roll with that. We're going to make that our bet. I think that's probably how I should have played it. I think that certainly would have been more profitable, but I think process-wise, that also made sense. So if anyone has any questions about that stuff, I'm happy to answer more about week 2. But I think that's pretty much all we got here from week 2. And then we're going to move on a little bit to week 3. But before I do that, we got a question in here from Daniel. He says, are we playing CH? Yes and no. So I'll probably have some CH. I've not set my lineups yet because there's so much injury information that I don't really want to get anchored to something before I end up having all of the injury information that's going to be quite relevant. But CH, I'll probably have a couple CH lineups. My concern is that I think people on Twitter, I tweeted about this earlier, people are acting as always going to be some contrarian bounce back play. And I think if we were playing DFS 3 years ago, that totally would have been the case. Like I think that people people definitely would have seen, oh man, CEH, he totally sucked last week. Let's jam him in. He's only 4,800, and he might have been like 8% owned. But now, I mean, most people are smarter. They're playing based off of projections. They're logging into roto grinders. They're logging into establish the run. They're logging into whatever service they use. And CH is going to pop in projections because as bad as he was last week, I mean, his workload is not a $4,800 workload, right? He's still getting 70% of the snaps. He's still running majority of the routes. He'll probably won't lose all the goal line carries to Darrell Williams. So that's what I'm getting. Am I playing? I mean, you can play anybody. Like I always have a lineup stop players. Any player makes sense in any given lineup as long as they project decently. CH certainly does. To me, I'd probably rather play Eckler in that game because I think Eckler might actually go under-owned. I think you're going to see more people play CEH with Keenan Allen. Like I think that's going to be really popular. I would probably play like Eckler and McCole Hardman. It's not a better play, but it's a less owned play, and then it allows me more freedom in the rest of my lineups. But I don't know. Let's say I was playing a stack that I don't think anyone's going to play. Like let's say I was playing, I don't know, a Matt Ryan double stack. That's going to have no ownership, you know. So if I'm playing a Matt Ryan double stack, I don't care about ownership for the rest of my lineup. Then yes, I'll definitely play CH. So long story short, I think he projects well, so he can definitely make sense in lineups. If you think that you're pulling one over on people, I don't think you're pulling one over on people. I think you might be one of the highest owned running backs on the slate. Tom says, looks like Tom forgot to update the color scheme. What a jobber. Yeah, I mean, step it up, Tom. Come on, man. You're supposed to be the producer extraordinaire. You're supposed to make me look good. It's hard to make me look bad when I'm having a good hair day like this. But come on, step it up. Step it up. All right. When I come back, we're going to talk about narrative speed. We're going to talk about all the different conversations going around week 3. Which of it am I buying? Which of it am I selling? What matters? And I'm going to answer more and more of your questions. Keep them coming. Remember, if you're just tuning in on Twitter, please go to the YouTube link. I can only see comments coming through YouTube right now. If you can't get to the YouTube link, just send me a DM on Twitter, and I will get to it eventually. I will make sure that I visit those at some point in the show. Otherwise, I will see you back here in just about 10 seconds while I grab a little sip of water. All right, here we go. We are back. We are going to drive down Narrative Street here for week number 3. Big things that everybody's going to be talking about this week. Number 1 is going to be this Rams and Bucs game. 2 high-paced teams, 2 pass-happy teams. Both, frankly, probably the best 2 teams in the NFC, maybe the best 2 teams in the NFL. I can't wait to watch this game, and that plays into it. People are going to want to watch this game, and they're going to want to watch this game with owning a bunch of dudes. You've only seen it probably consolidate even more with Antonio Brown being out. And so whatever ownership projections you're looking at, I think you're going to definitely see Kupp and Woods and Godwin all among the most rostered players on this slate. So what do you do? What do you do when the Bucs and the Rams come for you? This game, it's a little bit different to me than the Cowboys-Chargers game. I don't think it's going to be as centrally owned. I think a lot of people are going to play Chiefs-Chargers this week as well, so I'm a little bit more open to it. And I also, similar to last week, I think that there are options. I think that Van Jefferson is a really intriguing play this week, probably one of my favorite plays this week, even though I hate Van Jefferson. He is running 100% of the routes last week. I think he ran 92% week 1, so he's out there every snap. His ADOT is extremely high. And while his target share has not been very good this week, I would say 2 things. Number 1, if that target share sticks, his ADOT is so high that it kind of doesn't really matter. All he needs to do is probably catch 1 long touchdown. Then he's probably going to hit. It's also been 2 games, right? His target share could increase. His ADOT could also decrease. But we want to make positive assumptions. Maddie B says, my hair is fire. Yes, man. Thank you. For those who missed the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast last night, I'm going on a boat cruise afterwards. So I got to look good. I can't be rocking my usual backwards mesh hat look that's been sweat through about 1 million times. I'm trying to look classy today, okay? And this is we got the classy hair going right now. So thanks, Maddie. It does look fire. You're right. Other big thing in this Rams game is the Rams backfield situation. We got potentially no Henderson. I would say it's actually looking likely no Henderson.
I'm kind of probably not playing much of the Rams backfield, which aggravates me. I would have actually loved to play Henderson against Tampa this week because everyone is convinced that it's literally impossible for a running back to score fantasy points against Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. So, me being me, I'm more than willing to challenge that notion. With Henderson, I think he's been playing every snap. I mean, he played every snap until deep into the fourth quarter, week 1. He played every single snap, I believe, against the Colts, at least every snap that I saw, up until he ended up getting hurt. My issue is, I just, is that going to really continue after he hasn't even practiced the entire week? Like, if he's active and they name him the starter, I'm not sure he's going to have that big of a role. And I kind of need him to in a week where I think running back ownership is going to be actually pretty flat in that range. I think people are going to want to play Gibson. People are going to want to play Saquon. People are going to want to play Mixon, Harris, Carson, potentially Madison. We'll get to that. So I kind of need him to have that elite role for me to be super interested. I would be okay with Michelle. I'll probably play some Michelle if Henderson is out, especially if it really comes down to the wire and people don't know actually whether he's in or whether he's out. And I'll talk about that more later on too. My favorite play from this game is probably Leonard Fournette. I think that the most popular ways people will approach this game is either going to full-on stack it from either the Brady or the Stafford side, right? So you're going to play quarterback plus pass catcher, maybe another pass catcher, and then one from the other side, right? So I think we'll see a lot of Stafford, Kupp, Woods, Godwin, or Stafford, Kupp, Higbee, Godwin, Brady, Evans, Godwin, Kupp. You know what I'm talking about, right? Fournette, every ownership projection I see is pretty low on Fournette. I still think people have this idea of this Bucs backfield as is a stay away. You don't want to touch it each week. And maybe that's the case, but through 2 weeks, Fournette has clearly had the best role in this backfield. He's getting targets. He's getting carries. He's only $5,100 in an elite game environment. And he not only has the opportunity to have a great game, but he has the opportunity to take points away from Godwin, from Brady, from Evans, from Gronk every time he scores a touchdown. And he hasn't scored one yet this year. I don't think that's going to continue. So if Fournette continues to have the same role, and I think you will, especially against that Rams front, I think that they'll want to prioritize pass blocking. And Leonard Fournette clearly is the best pass blocker between him and Ronald Jones, who's just been a bit of a mess in that area so far this year. I think Fournette is one of the most interesting plays in the slate, and I expect him to come in under 10%. I'm probably going to be extremely overweight on Leonard Fournette. It's one of my favorite ways to attack this game. And the best part is because he does so much work in the pass game, I think you can play him either as a leverage point against Brady or with Brady. And I will have lineups of both. So I'll have lineups where, say, I'm stacking the Chiefs and I'm looking for savings because I'm going to play Mahomes, Kelsey, Tyreek Hill. How do I get that all in the same lineup? I'll play Fournette. That's going to take points away from the Bucs if he gets a rushing touchdown. Also, I'll play Brady, Fournette, Mike Evans, and Cooper Kupp all together in the same lineup. Why not? Right? So we're interested in all that stuff. On the Rams side, I'm probably going to play more Woods than Kupp. He's a lot cheaper, and projections say he'll also be less owned. It's been 2 weeks. That's enough for me to say that I would rather have Kupp than Woods and the rest of the season. It's not enough for me to say that that's 100% the way it's going to be the rest of the season, and certainly not to say that there will never be another game this season where Woods is better than Kupp. Woods ran all the routes last week. He had 29% of the targets. He had 38% of the air yards. That's a fantastic player at a $5,700 salary. And to me, it's entirely conceivable that he has a better week than Cooper Kupp, even if Cooper Kupp is the dominant alpha wide receiver that we've seen. So that's how I'm feeling about that game. Other big game this week is going to be the Chargers or the Chiefs. It seems like every time the Chiefs have a good game, they come in a little bit under-owned. And specifically, the Mahomes double comes in under-owned because it's just so price prohibitive. I'm going to play it once at least because I just can't live with myself if I don't. I really like Hardman this week, though, also in that game. Look, I'm trying to hype Van Jefferson and Mecole Hardman. Who am I? But he had a nice role last week. He's clearly second on the team in routes right now. He had 8 targets last week. I'm expecting this to be a game where they have to throw to keep pace. That's what you want it to be anyway if you're playing this game. And he comes in at just $3,900. We know the Hardman role. We know he's going to be an explosive playmaker down the field. We know he does not need to get concentrated volume. Might only need one play to pay off. So I'm open to playing Hardman a little bit at $3,900, similar to Van Jefferson. And on the Chargers side, I like all these guys. My favorite plays so far looking like Mike Williams and Austin Eckler. The Mike Williams' price finally adjusted. He's now pretty much the same price as Keenan Allen. He's only $200 cheaper. And that's fair based on the role so far. But the ownership projections I'm looking at, they don't seem to believe it. It seems to be still a strong preference for Keenan. And yeah, if you're telling me which one I had to play, gun to my head, I'm going to pick Keenan Allen. But I mean, I'm willing to sort of bet on this too. I talked about this in my article this week. I don't think we should be sure of anything after 2 weeks. So to me, if the market is sure that Cobb is clearly in a different tier than Woods, I'll play Woods. If the market is certain that their prior was correct and that Keenan is still in a different tier than Mike Williams, I'll play Mike Williams. Whatever they want to do, I'm okay betting the opposite because I think it's week 2 and I don't think we don't know shit. Eckler's really interesting to me because he's going to be on this higher price range, and I think people are really going to spend a lot of time in the mid-range at running back just because of all the different wide receivers they want to play in these games. And even extending to the Vikings and Seattle game where there's a lot of high-priced wide receivers, to even the Cardinals game, to if people want to play Diggs or if people want to play Ridley, all these guys. So I'm going to really, really play a lot of Austin Eckler this week, I think. We've seen the goal line roll now. We've seen the targets come back in week 2. I feel quite comfortable with Eckler. And so I think one of my favorite little mini correlations might be Eckler with Hardman. And then, of course, I'll try and get some Eckler in there in full game stacks, or Eckler Hill, Eckler Kelsey is more of a premium option. Those are probably the 2 biggest games of the week. And the other element to my narrative street is going to be what? I already talked about CH, so we're good. We talked about that with Daniel's question, but I think he's going to be really high owned. Seattle, Minnesota. What is going to happen with Dalvin Cook? What's going to happen with Dalvin Cook? I put a full section in my article this week to addressing the Dalvin Cook problem. What do we do when we have a star player in the late window who's injured? How do we handle that? I think it's really interesting. It might end up being moot because maybe 5 hours from now, Adam Schefter tweets something out that, yes, he's going to play. No, he's not going to play. But regardless, I think it's an interesting thing to discuss. So I'm going to discuss it right when we come back. Just going to grab a little sip of water. I'm going to check to see if there's any questions from Twitter. And then I'll be right back to talk about Dalvin Cook and how we're going to handle that. All right. So here's the situation with Dalvin Cook. I've seen some people talk up the Amir Abdullah practice squad elevation. He's now on the active roster as though that's a sign that Dalvin Cook's not going to play. No, that means nothing. They have elevated Amir Abdullah from the practice squad to the active roster on Saturday every week this year. So that was going to happen regardless. If anything, I think it's actually a little bit bullish on Cook playing. I've heard that AJ Rose would be the guy that they would probably have elevated if they felt Cook was not going to play. Abdullah has a special teams role for them. All I've heard from Minnesota beat reporters is that tentatively he's expected to play. However, they want to see him in pregame workouts, and that is music to my ears. I cannot think of a better way for this to play out than that we don't get any Shefty bomb saying Cook expected to play. What I want to hear is they're going to work him out. They're going to figure it out then, and everybody has to set their lineups before noon tomorrow without any clue on if Dalvin Cook is going to show up. Reason for that is people are scaredy cats. People don't late swap. So if I don't want I want to have an opportunity where we're guaranteed to get Minnesota running back at low ownership, right? I mean, Dalvin Cook, if he's healthy, he's probably like the RB1 on the slate. McCaffrey already played. He's off the slate. Kamara has a butt matchup. It's probably Dalvin Cook who's the RB1 on the slate ideally. And if we can get him a low ownership, that's great. That's great. Similarly, Madison at 6,000, I think is not a screaming value. I think that if this is a situation where Cook is announced he's probably going to miss on Saturday night and everybody's playing Madison, I'll happily fade Madison. But if it's the opposite, if we don't know, I mean, I don't know if anyone remembers last year, but there was a San Francisco-Seattle game where Chris Carson was questionable right up until the end of warmups, and they ruled him out before the late games kicked off. And so DJ Dallas got the backfield entirely to himself. He scored 2 touchdowns and he had like 2% ownership because people weren't swapping into him. If there's that kind of situation with Madison, then I'm all about it because Madison could absolutely smash in this spot. Anyone could. So what I'm going to be monitoring is I'm going to be building skeleton lineups where I want to maintain a little bit of flexibility, right? So ideally, any lineup where I'm at least open to playing a Minnesota running back, I would like to have sort of that spot filled out, and then I'd like to have at least my flex and a defense, and maybe more than that because I'm going to be stacking a lot in the late game, right? I'll be doing Bucks and Ram stacks and Vikings and Seahawks stacks, but I want at least a little bit of that flexibility because if it's Madison, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all of the early game ownership on similarly priced running backs, especially. So I'm going to look at Gibson, I'm going to look at Barkley, I'm going to look at Mixon, I'm going to look at Harris, and you can get a bit of a gauge on just how much ownership there is left that might be able to consolidate to Madison. Because most of that late game is going to be Madison and Carson in that range. And then if it's Cook, right, then okay, well, we'll have to figure out, bump it up to Cook and pull one of these wide receivers down, right? Change your Cup into a Van Jefferson. Change your Mike Evans into a Scott Miller. Change your Adam Thielen into a KJ Osborne, whatever. Make it work. Because if we have an opportunity to play Cook, like 3% ownership, I mean, you just do it. You just jam that in. And you do it especially if Ian Rappaport says he's going to be on a pitch count because he's 0 for lifetime. So especially if you can go against Raption. Matt says, how are we feeling about D-Hop? I've seen worry about the injury, the fact he hasn't seen the targets he normally does. Yeah, I mean, this one matters a little bit less because he plays the early slate, right? So you're going to know at 11:30 Eastern, an hour and a half before the game start, at the very least, if Hop is going to play, right? And possibly earlier. We usually get those Schefter tweets kind of overnight letting us know what's going to happen. We've seen Hopkins produce plenty of times at less than 100%. So if they say he's active, I have no issue firing up DeAndre Hopkins. And if he's not, then it's definitely a big bump for AJ Green. I think it's a moderate bump for Kirk and for Rondale Moore as well. I expect him to play. Worried about the targets? Not a lot. I mean, he's still seen, I think it's 12 targets, maybe 14 targets, something like that. He's still been really efficient. Yeah, it hasn't been what he's normally seen, but I mean, it's 2 weeks, right? And he still produced. I think he has like a perfect passer rating when targeted. So I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is washed. I think they're going to find targets for DeAndre Hopkins. I'm not super concerned about it. If this continues over like 3-4 weeks, 5 weeks, maybe, but I'm not super worried about Hopkins in the targets. When real DFS for Patreon come out, man, how about this? How about I have better weeks than week 2? And then we'll talk about it, but potentially over under Henry 135 plus total yards. I don't like I'm going to refrain from Derrick Henry opinions, man. I'm sick of that fucker. Honestly, I'm sick of that guy. When I load up on Henry, he gets like 4 points. When I don't have any Henry, he goes for 50. I no longer have opinions on Derrick Henry. I'm not giving them out. I don't have them. I'm not sure I'm going to acknowledge him. I'm over Henry. We're done with Henry. We're talking about the Cook thing. The last thing I wanted to mention on Cook and Madison is window number 3, which is that Madison ends up being highly owned. And it's looking this way either because you get the tip from the night before, or you're counting up the ownership. It looks like there's tons left. People are going to want to swap to him. There are other options. I already mentioned Fournette in that late window. Kenyon Drake in that late window. It looks like Josh Jacobs is not playing. There's Myles Gaskin, who is a decent enough play. There's whatever back the Rams end up putting out there as their starter. So I think there's other options. Point is, I want to attack the situation. I expect under-owned on either. And I think best case scenario is that you don't find out the night before and you make sure to leave yourself flexibility. That's how I'd handle it. That's how I think you should handle it. And I think it's going to be, potentially quite lucrative, especially if it is Dalvin Cook, because there's just the only other comparable running back in price to Cook is Henry. Next up is Kamara. Both those guys are in the early window. So people are going to have to do a lot of 2v2, 3v3 style swapping to get up to Dalvin Cook. And you really have to plan for that in advance, right? It's not the same situation as if someone has Chris Carson in their lineup. They go, oh, Cook's not playing. I like to play Madison. Carson, Madison, beep, boop, you're done, right? People are going to have to go, okay, if I had, Carson in my lineup, or if I even had Madison in my lineup, Fournette, whatever, I want to get up to Cook, you have to pull another wide receiver down. You might have to do multiple wide receivers. You're going to have to fence with your defense. It's going to be a lot harder. Less people are going to do it. So I'm not really concerned. Tom says Kamara is a season-long fade in DFS. The offense improves, or he does get a pass. Or does he get a pass? I don't do season-long fades in DFS. All I really care about is projection and ownership and correlation. So this week I'm not that into Kamara because it's a disgusting game. Like it's a super low total. Patriots are not a very explosive offense. The Saints have so far not been a particularly explosive offense. I'll have some Kamara because I don't think he's going to be super highly rostered unless it's said that Cook is going to be out the night before. Then the only expensive running backs are Henry and Kamara, and then I think Kamara will end up catching a lot of ownership. And I certainly don't really want to play a highly owned Kamara in one of the grossest games on the slate as a one-off. That seems pretty nasty. But yeah, I mean, if people are worried about Kamara and I can get Kamara at 5% or something like that, I'm all about it for sure. So definitely not a season-long fade. I'm not worried about it. His role's still been really good. And, I think this Panthers defense is legit. I'm not totally worried and just writing off, the Saints offense in any way, shape, or form. All right. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of my favorite plays of the week that we have not already discussed in some of the other games, some of my other favorite ways to attack this slate. We're going to do 3 of those structural builds that I'm going to be doing in at least one of my lineups this week. Then we're going to do the sneaky athlete of the week. Then we're going to do GPP roulette. And then we're going to get, I will see you back here in just a second. All right, let us do it here. We got our money plays of the week. We already talked about those top games, and I'm definitely going to be having a lot of roster shift in those games. Some of my other stuff that I really enjoy. If there's no Cook, especially if we get word the night, it's going to be Vikings pass catchers. I want to play Cousins, Jefferson, Thielen, Osborne, Conklin. I want to play all those dudes. I don't want to play chalky Alex Madison at 6K whatsoever. And I think a lot of people will play the Seahawks side. They're the more fun side to play. They'll bring back with Madison. I would rather play the Vikings side and then bring back with Metcalf or Lockett, maybe even Carson, but probably one of those pass catchers. I think that's really fun. I'm open to playing Vikings pass catchers regardless of Cook, but especially I think if it ends up being where we get a chalky Madison situation where we're told Cook's not going to play the night before, I'd be all over it. I talked about Mike Williams, big into Mike Williams this week. And then 2 other games. I call this the Undercats, the Jaguars, the Lions. I think people generally are pretty confident early season when they shouldn't be about who can and cannot keep pace in games with these high totals. The game that I really liked last week, one of them was the Bucks and the Falcons, because I think people were kind of writing off the Falcons after week 1. And I was like, all right, well, what if the Falcons aren't absolutely terrible on offense this week? What if the Eagles were just actually a pretty good defense? What if they can't keep pace a little bit? And it could have gone better if Matt Ryan didn't throw 2 consecutive pick sixes. It could have gone really, really well. But, even the way it went, it was still quite positive. I mean, Brady Gronk's sacks, Brady Evans stacks absolutely smashed. And Ridley and Pitts were both totally acceptable to bring back. I mean, my God, if you'd ever played Cordero Patterson, if you had the foresight to play Cordero Patterson, then it really, really smashed. Even Brady Godwin got there. So that was pretty good. And this week, I'm looking at Arizona and Jacksonville. Right? I mean, we know what Kyler can do. Hop, game time decision, maybe get Hop a little bit less ownership. And I think you can afford him this week because of all of the lower priced running backs on this slate. I'm interested in that. I think a lot of people are going to play Rondale again. He was fantastic last week. He'll be fantastic this week. He still only ran half the route. So I'm still probably more inclined to play Kirk or Green if they're going to come in with much less ownership. I like Rondale straight up over them, but I'll probably play some Kirk and some Green again this week. And I'm open to just playing the Jacksonville side straight up, man. I mean, they're passing more than anybody else in the NFL. All we need is for them to hit on a couple of these deep attempts to Chark or to Marvin Jones, and it's going to look a lot better. I'm not writing off Trevor Lawrence after 2 weeks. We've been hyping this dude up for years, and we're just done with him after 2 weeks after he's passing a ton. What if he finally starts running? So I'm open to playing that side as well, because no one's going to be playing Lawrence this week. And I think that we can get really creative with the rest of our lineup. If you play like Lawrence, Marvin, Chark, any Cardinal you want, and then just play whatever you want in the last game. I mean, then you're going to have tons of salary. You're going to have tons of ownership to play with as well. And then the other one is the Ravens and the Lions. I mean, I'm not going to play Goff, but I want to play everyone in this game that's relevant because Ravens offense so far has been really fun. And it's been really concentrated. It's Lamar's pretty much only thrown to Hollywood Brown and Sammy Watkins. Mark Andrews' role has been muted so far, but he's running more routes than he's ever run. So I still think it's coming from Mark Andrews. And then with these Lions, I mean, they've looked more competent than we expect. And the Ravens are missing, I think, 4 defensive starters with COVID. So I think the Lions could keep up in this game. Why not? So I'm going to play Lamar with Andrews and with Hollywood. I might even try a Watkins lineup. We'll see. But definitely with Hollywood and with Andrews. And then I will do Hawk bringbacks. I'll do Swift bringbacks. I might even consider Quintez Cephas, who's had a pretty nice role. So we're going to do a lot of that game for sure. Those are probably my favorite plays this week. When we come back, we're going to hit the sneaky athlete of the week. Then we're going to play a little roulette. Then we're going to get out of here. We're going to let you all enjoy the rest of your Saturday. So I will see you back here in just a second. All right, the sneaky athlete of the week. We just alluded to him. Our sneaky athlete of the week, not that sneaky as a player, but sneaky on this slate. It's Mr. Sunshine, Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is the sneaky athlete of the week. I mean, he ran for over 500 yards 2 years ago in college football, has not been using his legs a whole lot this year, but I'm not willing to say that's no longer a part of his game because of a 2-week sample whatsoever. I think people have forgotten about his rushing upside. I think people have forgotten about his passing upside. And at just $5,500 on DraftKings, he is a value play that has some serious ceiling potential and a great game environment at very low ownership. So my sneaky athlete of the week this week is Trevor Lawrence. All right, it's time for the last segment. Last week, we came close, man. We came close. We had the Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford connection. We sullied it with Jonathan Taylor, who continued to get stuffed at the 1-yard line over and over and over again. It was absolutely maddening. So we didn't make the cash line. We're 0 for 2. However, we're going to try one more time. We're going to bring out the roulette wheel. When we return, we're going to bring out the roulette wheel, and we're going to try GPP Roulette. For anyone who does not remember how this game works, I went through names that you suggested and filled out the rest with just the names that I saw on Twitter. I just opened Twitter and I scrolled, and every time I saw a name, I added it to the list. We're going to spin a roulette wheel twice. We're going to see what it lands on from 1 to 36. Whatever players the roulette wheel gives me, I have to plug those 2 players into a DraftKings lineup that I will be playing this week, and then we will build a lineup from around there. Please, if you're in the chat, help me out. It's very nice to get the help. We'll do this together. So when we return, we are going to play one more round here of Dfs Gpp Roulette, and we will get back to you right away. All right, folks, let's get going here on the GPP Roulette, and we got to get our stream share up and running. Let's see here. We got this working. We got this working. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. All right. We're going to spin it twice. We're going to see what happens. Let's go. Here we're going to spin. 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 And we are at, what is it giving us? 15. 15. Okay. And we're bringing out the binder here. Quintez Cephas. Quintez Cephas is our first pick. All right, let's go into DraftKings here. I'm going to lock in Quintez Cephas. Where are you at, Quintez? Welcome to the lineup, Quintez Cephas. All right, one more spin. Who are we going to pair with Quintez Cephas? For the record, I'm actually totally okay with the Cephas pick. I just, 33. And that one's going to be Kirk Cousins. Okay. I'm actually super fine with both of these. I think Cephas is in kind of an interesting game environment, getting a bunch of air yards. Looks like the number 1 receiver. I mean, the real number 1 receiver is Hawkinson. Number 1 person with a wide receiver position. And then, Kirk Cousins. I'm totally fine with Kirk Cousins, I just mentioned. So let's go ahead and we will get the DraftKings lineup sharing, and then let's talk through this. Let's get this going here. Let's make this happen. All right. So biggest thing I always talk about, why do we do this? We do this because it's about lineups. It's not about players. You can make any lineup work within reason as long as you're understanding correlation, you're understanding leverage, right? So we're starting with Cousins, starting with Cephas. I'm totally happy with that start, right? First things first, we're playing Kirk Cousins, right? That means we're talking about Vikings, we're talking about Seahawks. Any lineup I do, especially in a large field tournament, I'm at least going to have one stack and then one bring back. I like to play just a skinny in a large field GPP like this. This was a small field. I might be more inclined to play, Osborne or Conklin along with Jefferson or Thielen. So I'm going to start off, going to put in Justin Jefferson. He's still, at least by his role, by his air yards, by his profile, still is the clear wide receiver one. Thielen obviously plays that end zone, red zone role. But let's going to lock in Jefferson here. We're already saving some money with Cephas. And then it's going to be, who do we come back on the Seattle side? Right? I'm going to go through. If you're in the chat, by the way, feel free to suggest some plays. We can make it work. Lockett, Metcalf. I mean, these guys are the same price. We could play Carson, but with Seattle, I tend to like playing the receivers as the bring back just because I want that big play upside to sort of spur the game going back and forth. If this is a Carson game where he's just gouging them for first down after first down, I think that plays a lot slower. That's probably not very good for the Minnesota side of this. So I'm going to play Metcalf. Now we have our wide receivers filled up, right? So we got Cephas in here. We got Jefferson. We got Metcalf in here. And I'd probably move one of these to the flex, of course, because it's a late game. So if we already got Cephas, right, now we're looking at our secondary correlation. We probably want Baltimore. We don't have a tight end yet, so we're going to play Mark Andrews here. Now we got two correlations. We got a lot of freedom. What do we want to do at running back? What do we want to do at wide receiver? We have plenty of salary to work with. If you take all the money we're doing on a defense, we can play about $6K for anybody. So we can certainly do something a little bit spicier. Running back, we will buy our own guys. If anybody in the chat has any plans, any ideas for what we want to do, otherwise I will go through and build. But what I'm probably looking at, I mentioned Eckler. I'm a big fan of Eckler this week. I'm going to go ahead and slot in Eckler. I'm going to see what that does. I'm going to see quickly. Can we afford Tyreek Hill in this lineup? Probably not. Yeah, we cannot. All right. What if we do? What if we do play Hardman? What if we play Hardman? Hardman. Let's do. Yeah, Mecole. There we go. Let's add you in there. And just to know, I would move Jefferson to the flex because then Jefferson or Metcalf, because then we have that optionality in the late game. But so we're not doing that. All right, we have 9,200 left. We still got to pick a defense. So we're probably going to be living in that upper 6 range. It's a one-off play. I'm looking at, okay, where's our ownership right now? I think that we're going to have probably about 5%, maybe max on Cousins. I think Jefferson's going to be just a little under 10. So I'm feeling pretty good about where our ownership is. I don't think we have any super chalky plays. I think we can just play pretty much whoever we want in this last slot. And so for me, it's between, Taylor has a really nice matchup, Harris and Barkley. I mean, any of these guys, I'm really open to. For me personally, I'm more inclined to play Taylor. I just think we've seen more explosive plays out of him than we've seen out of Najee Harris. I think Barkley is going to be really popular this week. But I think any of those guys are fine. So I'm going to play Taylor, and maybe that changes. I'm going to look and see what defense are available. I can play Atlanta. I don't really want to do that. Play Chargers. All right. What if I do this and I play? Yeah. So if I go up and I want to play a slightly more expensive defense, what does that do for me here at running back? If I go down and I want to play, I could play Mixon, and then we can afford more of a defense. I'm going to do that. I'm going to play Joe Mixon. They might run the ball even more this week just with the injuries that they have to T. Higgins. Then I can go ahead, and we're in a situation, all right, I don't want to play the Vikings or the Seahawks defenses. I don't want to play the Colts defense. They looked totally fine last week. We got 200 salary on the table, so maybe we go up from Mixon just to someone else. we could play Saquon Barkley. All right, welcome to the lineup, Saquon Barkley. We're going to enter here Kirk Cousins, Eckler, Barkley, Cephas, Jefferson, Metcalf, Andrews, Hardman with the Colts D. That is our GPP roulette for the week. That's our show for the week. You can follow me on Twitter, of course, FF_RTDB. You can check out my work, including my DFS breakdown for Player Profiler. You can check out before the slate kicks off tomorrow. That's the Pareto Principles for Week 3. That's up on playerprofiler.com. That is my pinned tweet. And, of course, check out the rest of the Full Tilt team. Billy is going to have his lineup or is going to have his weekly reviews coming up next. Then we're going to have the walkabout. Then we're going to be back with me and Tom and Billy for the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast, of course, on Friday next week. And once again, of course, I just want to shout out the GoFundMe for Mike Taglier's family, everything that's going on about that. We talked about that at the top of the show and definitely want to hit that once more. Otherwise, thank you all for tuning in. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for adjusting to this new world here without the Twitter comment sphere. I know it's not quite as interactive as it used to be, but hopefully that gets addressed. And otherwise, have a ton of fun this weekend watching football. Have a ton of good luck with your lineups. Everybody, it's been a pleasure.